What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV, and today I'm talking about not just The Mummy, but Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Not this mummy. I don't know why I even bother with Blumhouse at this point. The whole Blumhouse business model is to kind of aim low. Horror movies for cheap. These scripts they write in a weekend, if not a day, with most of the appeal of the film being an advertisable concept. I actually think there is a gap in the market for a horror movie set in Egypt that embraces the scarier side of The Mummy that isn't just purely an adventure film. Although this film's got some creepy stuff in it. This film is actually probably scarier than the Blumhouse one. God, it's shorter too. So why does it say Lee Cronin in the title? Who is Lee Cronin? He's directed a few things. The only one I've seen is Evil Dead Rise, which I thought was actually a really solid horror movie with a level of self-awareness and, almost most importantly for a film like this, a brief runtime. It gave you everything you wanted from the premise, didn't overstay its welcome, didn't reinvent the wheel or anything. A good 3-star kind of horror movie. And supposedly he actually turned down the opportunity to make a sequel to this movie, which I think is what is wound up being Evil Dead Burn? Yeah, I saw a trailer for it before The Mummy started. But instead of him staying with Evil Dead, he moved over to Blumhouse and made this shit. This was unbearably boring, doesn't explore the concept at all, and is much more of a formulaic ghost, poltergeist, possession type movie. That ironically, when it shows flashes of energy or stylistic choices that reminded me of Evil Dead Rise, it kind of just seemed like a limp Evil Dead movie with the Mummy instead of the Necronomicon. And I guess it's the opportunity that bugs me about the Blumhouse movies, where I think horror is such a flexible genre. You can do so much with it, so many different tones, and have miserable, dour endings, and can get abstract and psychological. But so few of these Blumhouse movies give a shit about the actual films. Like, let me just search some of the recent ones for all the Paranormal Activity stuff. Insidious is just unwatchable, but makes so much money. The Purge Halloween trilogy was, oh god, that was so bad. I don't know what it is about bad horror movies that really pisses me off in a way that other films don't. So the only real standouts are what, Get Out, which I always forget they released. Split was okay, and Whiplash and Black Klansman too. But they more stand out because they're unusual for being such quality, for being associated with Blumhouse. Pretty much everyone in the film is bad. They don't have good material to work with, but these are some pretty awful performances when the whole hook of it working is that it's kind of a family in a house in danger, Hereditary style. But Jack Reynor ain't no Toni Collette, and he's obviously in Midsommar. The level of disbelief I have for these movies kind of depends on the tone, and this movie wants you to take it seriously. This isn't a tongue-in-cheek Evil Dead mood outside of a couple of moments of gruesome violence, which I guess looked okay in a vacuum. I just didn't care about anything or anyone, so it just seemed to be there just to check a box. A few kid actors too, and they're all terrible. So this character is the Mummy, of which the framing is she gets kidnapped when she's a little girl from the end of her garden, and then shows up 7 or 8 years later because a plane crashes that's carrying a sarcophagus, which she was in. This is a done-to-death formula. If you've seen 2 or 3 horror movies before, you've seen this movie. Some questionable creative choices too. Like, I enjoy a split diopter shot as much as the next guy, but like, I don't think I've seen a film abuse it in a way that actually becomes distracting. Like, what was the actual narrative, thematic, creative purpose for using that technique so often? That was quite strange. I'm trying to think of something I liked. There were a couple of shots that used the depth of the frame quite well, with some kind of action or event happening in the background while the character in the foreground hasn't noticed it yet. I couldn't really get over the whole fact that once they get the kid back after the time jump, and she's in hospital and can't speak, she's clearly physically very ill, like her skin is falling off. The doctors are just like, well, I think the best thing for her is to take her home, actually. A bit of TLC will fix her right up. And then obviously she goes home and the family is just complete disarray because there's a mummy in the house. Like, very obviously something is up, and the characters have to be stupid and make bad decisions and argue all the time just for the sake of things happening. I think this would be slightly more bearable, like it would be bumped up a star or two if it just wasn't so long. Why is it this long? Why are you doing this? 90 minutes for shit like this. And you could carve out a lot of this movie and nothing would change. It doesn't know when to end. It has this whole epilogue sequence that's so stupid. No tension, which is one of the most important things or aspects to horror movies, or even base level atmosphere. It kind of tricks you at the beginning with a lot of Egyptian characters and the setting being Egypt, but then the vast majority of the movie is in a house in America. So that's extremely lame. It doesn't have a focused perspective character either, because it has all this stuff going on. There's like a detective investigating what's going on, but there's also this cultish woman, as well as the Jack Rayner character, who's like a journalist. Then it will switch to the youngest daughter kind of forming some kind of bond out of nowhere with the mummy. It just played fast and loose with everything it was going for. And no fun rules or lore or tropes attached to Egyptian mythology or history. Feels like an extremely unpolished first draft, like a really rough first draft. Does a terrible job of explaining how or why this creature is tearing the family apart and pitting them against each other. And man, the music and sound effects, they are so over the top and irritating and won't let it develop an atmosphere. It insists that it's scary again and again in this really insecure, repetitive, tiring way. The last thing I'll compliment is that there is kind of a cool idea with the investigator character where, obviously in this time gap where the daughter had vanished for years and years, there's a dark sequence where he has to go through an old chest with all of these letters that people have sent him from people trying to share their support or comfort for the horrible situation that they've gone through as parents. So I can imagine a film that kind of used that more and indulged in that darkness of having to relive the whole thing and explore all these letters talking about it. There's kind of cool ideas here and there, little flashes, but it's never enough. This was a pretty miserable, unfun cinematic experience for me. I would not recommend it, and I give this a 1.5 star. No thanks, Lee Cronin. But I don't think I actually mentioned why it has that name. It's because of The Mummy. They were scared. Blumhouse were freaking out that on all of their social media posts about this version of the film, all the replies were like, "Where's Brendan Fraser?" You can see the original title there was just The Mummy. I'm sorry, all the cultural capital given to The Mummy is this movie right here. I gotta wreck this on Sardonicast or something. It's been a while since I've seen this. It kind of reads as an ego thing to have his name first, like he's Hideo Kojima or something. But this guy didn't make like Metal Gear, and it seems like he's basically had to be a bit of a fool guy for the sake of box office return. What was the budget on this? So Wikipedia reckons about $22 million, and this hasn't even been out a week in the UK as of me recording, so there it is. That's why we keep getting these. It's only really funny or interesting when the movie is good, or if it's like a M3 Gun 2, where they're just so off the money that it's kind of weird and interesting to talk about. This just sucks. So let me know your thoughts on Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I'll see you on the next vid. Bye!